Waiting seasons are divine classrooms where God prepares what He's promised. Many times we find ourselves in places where it feels like everything has stopped. No answers, no doors opening, no movement. But what we fail to realize in the stillness is that God is actively preparing both the promise and the person. Waiting is not punishment, it's process. When God places a promise in your heart, He doesn't fulfill it instantly because the journey itself becomes part of the transformation. Just like a seed buried in the soil doesn't bloom overnight, your calling needs to be rooted before it can flourish. In these seasons of delay, we are taught patience, trust, and surrender. These are not passive virtues. They are powerful weapons that develop only when our natural strength fades and we learn to lean fully on Him. God's preparation often looks like stripping away distractions, idols, pride, and even the illusion of control. The classroom of waiting builds character. It exposes the fragile parts of our faith and calls us to grow deeper, not wider. In this place, God deals not just with your situation, but with your heart. He asks you to trust Him when there's no sign, believe Him when there's no evidence, and hold on when everything in you wants to let go. He molds your endurance, sharpens your vision, and anchors your identity, not in what you do, but in who He says you are. When the breakthrough finally comes, it won't just be about receiving what you've waited for, it will be about who you became while you waited. The delay will make sense because you'll realize the promise wasn't just about changing your circumstances, it was about changing you. And in that sacred realization, you'll understand God never wastes waiting. He uses it as the very soil where destiny takes root and grows. God's silence is not His absence. It's often the sound of construction behind the curtain. In moments when heaven seems quiet, when your prayers echo back in stillness, it's easy to assume God has gone missing. But silence is never an indicator of inactivity. Instead, it's often the clearest sign that God is doing His deepest work, just not in a way that can be seen yet. Think of a sculptor chiseling away at a great block of marble. The sculpture isn't visible in the early stages, but every strike is intentional, shaping what will soon be revealed. God's silence is like that. He is shaping your outcome with precision, hidden from view so you'll trust His hand even when you can't trace it. We want the answers, the breakthroughs, the visible signs, but God wants to grow our faith, not in what He does, but in who He is. When He's silent, He's teaching you to lean in, not walk away. He's refining your ear to hear His whisper in a world full of noise. He's pulling you out of dependence on your own understanding and placing you in the position of surrender. We often measure God's activity by outward blessings, but His greatest miracles happen in the heart, in silence, in waiting, in trust. When the silence feels like a wall, remember it's actually a veil being lifted slowly so your character can match the weight of the calling. Sometimes God goes quiet because He wants to see if you'll still worship when there's no reward, still pray when there's no answer, still believe when there's no visible hope. That kind of faith is what He builds in silence. And when the construction's complete, when the curtain finally lifts, you'll see that every second of silence was filled with sacred purpose. God wasn't gone. He was working on something glorious. Delay is not denial. What looks like a setback is often a setup in disguise. It's a truth we struggle with because we're wired to expect fast results, instant answers, and immediate outcomes. But God doesn't operate on human timetables. His timing is both perfect and purposeful. What you call delay, heaven may call divine alignment. Just because something hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it's not going to. God never forgets a promise he made, and he never abandons the plans he's written over your life. The delay you're experiencing might feel like rejection, but it's actually redirection. He's not withholding, he's weaving. He's aligning people, places, circumstances, and timing so that when the door does open, it opens with favor, peace, and power. God doesn't give prematurely what is meant to mature. Sometimes he lets a door remain closed, not because you're not good enough, but because the room on the other side isn't ready, or maybe you're still being equipped to walk through it strong and secure. Think of Joseph in prison, or David tending sheep. They were not forgotten. They were being prepared. Their delay was a divine setup that positioned them to carry greatness with humility and grace. What felt like a step backward was actually a launch pad forward. You are not being punished. You are being preserved. God is guarding you from premature exposure, from broken timing, and from opportunities that aren't worthy of your purpose. When it finally happens, you'll see it clearly. The delay was your protection, and the no was really a not yet wrapped in love. He knows what you're ready for even when you don't. He knows what you're ready for even when you don't. He knows what you're ready for even when you don't. He knows what you're ready for even when you don't. He knows what you're ready for even when you don't. He knows what you're ready for even when you don't. He knows what you're ready for even when you don't. He knows what you're ready for. So keep walking even when it feels like nothing is moving. Keep believing even when it seems like heaven is silent. Your delay has destiny written all over it. What looked like a detour is actually a direct route to something greater than you imagined. God uses waiting to break our dependence on timing and deepen our trust in him. We live in a world where everything runs on clocks and calendars. We're conditioned to believe that success must happen by a certain age, that answers must come quickly, and that time wasted is opportunity lost. But God is not bound by time. He created it. His purposes stretch beyond our deadlines. Waiting becomes a sacred tool in his hands, not to frustrate us, but to free us from the illusion that we are in control. He removes our timelines so we can learn to live in his presence moment by moment. When you're forced to wait, you're forced to trust. You come to a point where your plans crumble, your efforts feel powerless, and all that remains is faith. And that is where God begins to work deeply. He's not just after what you want. He's after your heart. He wants your surrender, not your schedule. The longer you wait, the deeper he reaches. You start letting go of your pride, your logic, your deadline. You begin to pray differently, not demanding answers, but asking for more of him. And when that shift happens, you start to grow, not just upward, but downward into unshakable faith. Waiting dismantles idols you didn't even know you had. Your timeline, your comfort, your expectations. It teaches you to worship not because of what God does, but simply because of who he is. When the wait is long, God is not punishing you. He is purifying you. He is extracting fear and replacing it with courage. He is taking your shallow faith and turning it into something that can stand through storms. Eventually you realize the wait wasn't about the blessing. It was about building a foundation strong enough to carry the weight of what's coming. In God's economy, waiting is never wasted. It is a spiritual surgery where he removes everything that would destroy the promise before it's delivered. So trust him not just for what's coming, but in the process that's shaping you while you wait. He is not just preparing the blessing for you, he is preparing you for the blessing. Many people focus solely on the promise, on the dream, the breakthrough, the answered prayer, but forget that the journey to the promise is often what qualifies us to receive it. God is not only working on the external situation, He is deeply invested in shaping the internal condition of your heart. Blessings are not just gifts. They are responsibilities. And without proper preparation, a blessing can become a burden. That's why the waiting season is so important. It becomes the place where God molds, trains, refines, and strengthens you so that when the promise arrives, you don't mishandle it, misuse it, or be destroyed by it. You may be praying for the platform, but God is building your character to stand on it. You may be asking for the relationship, but He's healing your identity so you can love from wholeness and not from brokenness. You may be longing for the opportunity, but God is developing wisdom, patience, and discernment so that you'll know how to steward it well. If you skip the process, you sabotage the promise. When God delays something, it's not denial, it's development. He's stretching your faith, deepening your humility, and grounding your identity in Him, not in the outcome. If the blessing came too early, you might not be ready. But when He finishes His work in you, you'll realize the blessing is not just what you receive, it's who you've become. You'll be able to carry the calling with grace, not arrogance. You'll honor the gift because you know what it cost. You'll use the platform to glorify Him, not yourself. What's ahead of you is great, but God is more concerned with preparing the vessel than revealing the vision. When it finally comes, it will fit not just your desire, but your destiny. And you'll be able to handle it not because of your strength, but because of what God built in you while you were waiting. When it seems like nothing is moving, heaven is orchestrating everything in perfect alignment. There are seasons in life where everything feels still, too still. You pray, but nothing shifts. You hope, but doors remain closed. It can feel like your life is stuck in pause while others are living in fast forward. But just because you can't see movement doesn't mean movement isn't happening. God often works in silence and stillness because His greatest alignments take time. Behind what seems like delay is a divine coordination that your eyes cannot yet perceive. He is not only working on your behalf, He's working on others, timing, location, atmosphere, and positioning. Heaven's timeline is not random. It is orchestrated with eternal precision. When you feel forgotten, God is actually fixing details that are critical to the promise He's about to release. The people you haven't met yet, the favor that hasn't surfaced yet, the shifts that haven't occurred yet, all of it is being divinely synchronized. Just as a symphony doesn't sound right until every instrument is in place, your promise will only make sense when every piece is where it's meant to be, and God is the conductor, timing every note, every pause, every crescendo perfectly. What you see as nothing is often the quiet before divine acceleration. What feels like a dead end is often just the start of a divine rerouting that leads to something better. Your job is not to manipulate the pieces, it's to trust the one who holds the whole puzzle. Don't measure progress by movement. Measure it by trust. God has not abandoned your story. He is authoring it in layers. When the time is right, what seemed delayed will arrive suddenly, and you'll understand that every no, every pause, and every silence was heaven working all things together for your good. Keep believing, because while you wait, heaven is aligning the impossible for the moment it all comes together perfectly.